How many breakups have you been through? How many times have you thought to yourself, maybe I'm destined to be single forever? The statistics feel overwhelming. Almost 50% of all marriages end in divorce or separation. Relationships fail every single day. But what if good relationships don't have to be based on luck? What if it's simply a matter of skill? Skills that can be learned. In this video, I'm going to talk about the 4 crucial skills that you need for successful relationships. If you're new here, my name's Chris. I'm a creator with ADHD, and I help fellow ultra-normal brains learn the tools to focus, grow, and get stuff done. So the first crucial skill to learn is arguably the most important and most difficult skill to learn in relationships. And to understand why, it's important to understand the difference between blame and responsibility. So in difficult situations, it can be a very natural human tendency to default to blame, blaming others, blaming situations, blaming circumstances. So if you think about the last breakup that you had, you may think to yourself, oh, it was the other person's fault. There's usually a default blame reaction. And it makes sense because our brains want to process the information. So if we have something to point to as a matter of blame, then it's easier for us to process the hurt and the pain from it. Blame is a very natural human reaction. And if you have a fast-acting brain, if you're a fellow ADHD like me, blame can be the default reaction. Think about it this way. If someone said to you, why did you forget to turn off the stove? It can be an automatic reaction to think of all the times when that other person forgot something. They forgot to do something. So the blame shifts from yourself to the other person. And the problem with that reaction is that it doesn't answer any questions or change the situation at all. So when it comes to relationships, blaming the other person for the problems in the relationship, rather than looking at our own role in how these problems arise, is a big problem. Blame is very rigid, it's accusatory, and it's a very win-lose scenario. It's what we call a zero-sum situation. When we're blaming other people, we become victims. Even when we blame ourselves, we become a victim of ourselves. And this blame is never a good look, and it's never a good strategy. But there's a different option: taking responsibility. Taking responsibility is an act of maturity, of flexibility, of growth, and it creates a win-win approach. There's a quote by Mark Manson, who's the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. The quote is, "The more we choose to accept responsibility in our own lives, the more power we will exercise over our lives. Accepting responsibility for our problems is the first step to solving them." So the first skill is learning to remove blame and replace it with responsibility. When you take responsibility for your part in every situation that you're involved in, it means that solutions can be created and problems can be solved. When you take responsibility, you're not taking all of the burden of the blame. You're simply acknowledging that you were a part of the situation, and you look forward into how to avoid that situation again in the future. The next crucial skill is to become a good teacher. And this is where a lot of people fall down. So being a good teacher is not about lecturing, which I'll actually address it in another video. Being a good teacher is about communicating your ideas and perspectives effectively. And a lot of people think that they're a good teacher. They would say that they're a good teacher, but when it comes down to it, they set up high expectations on the other person. They push out the blame onto the other person, and they throw out all the aspects of what it takes for people to actually learn. They try to express their opinion. They try to teach. They try to give their opinions and perspectives. And then when their partner doesn't understand, doesn't receive it well, the teacher then starts to blame the student. Becoming a good teacher is actually understanding what it takes for people to learn. This is about communication, creating a good learning environment to teach in the correct way to the other person. And there are 2 parts to teaching. 1 is knowing the subject, and 2 is communicating it in an effective way. Being a teacher is not about being above somebody else. Being a good teacher is all about being able to communicate your ideas and your opinions and your perspectives effectively to the person that you're trying to teach them to. So how do you become a good teacher? You need to develop your skills as a student. You need to become a student of your students. So next up, we'll talk about what it means to be a good student. But before we jump in, if you want more tips, advice, and strategies on ADHD, relationships, and communication, then I invite you to sign up to my weekly newsletter or sign up for my free focus bootcamp, where I dig into the tools that myself and other fellow ultra-normal members use every single day. If you want to start living up to your potential and craft the thriving life that you deserve, then click on the link in the description below to join us and take the next step. So the next crucial skill is to become a good student. So being a student in a relationship means being open to learning and growing. Because relationships are very much mirrors of ourselves, they can reflect every aspect of who we are, the positives and the negatives. And as you go through relationships, these quirks, flaws, weaknesses start to show their face. And then your partner takes the time to point these out to you. And if you don't have good skills as a student, often what happens is that you can get offended that someone is trying to tell you something rather than focus on what the substance of that something is. It can be very easy to interpret someone telling you about a problem in the relationship, in the way that you do things, but someone telling you of a problem is a good thing. Someone pointing out a weakness or a flaw in you is a sign that someone is invested in you. It's a sign that someone cares enough to think that you have the potential to change and to grow. So it's really important to become a good student because you have blind spots whether someone tells them to you or not. So taking the time to recognize that we don't know everything and develop a good learning mindset, it's crucial. And if you're investing time in a relationship, then it's important that you encourage your partner to be a good teacher to you, which means developing the skill to become a good student and not being surprised that criticism is going to happen. And then one of the most important skills in relationships is to learn forgiveness. It may not be convenient, but the truth is that good people can do bad things. When we're feeling hurt, our lizard brain can try to protect us by doing something called splitting, which is our mind splitting people into good or bad. It's very all or nothing thinking. So if your partner does something that you feel hurt by, your mind can start to put your partner into the bad category. And this is simply to protect us from being hurt, from being disappointed. But unfortunately, because our brain does that, it removes all the nuance from situations. And it means that we can be overly protective of our feelings and not actually think about the reasons behind people's behavior. We simply focus on the fact that we're hurt. So in order to develop the skill of forgiveness, it's important to manage our emotions and also to recognize the true intentions behind our partner's behavior. And this can be a struggle because a lot of us suffer from a significant bias, which is called the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error is putting the weight of people's behavior onto their character rather than the environment that they're in. So this is a bias that our brains can lean on when we're interpreting our partner's actions. And this is where we judge what they do as a deeply ingrained character trait rather than a cause of the environment around them. So let's say a situation where your coworker arrives late to a meeting. If your brain is giving into the bias, then your response may be thinking that John is always late to our meetings, he's lazy, he doesn't value our time, it's simply his personality to be irresponsible. But reinterpreting it without that bias means that you can consider the external factors. For example, John could have been stuck in heavy traffic or has car problems or be dealing with struggles at his home that leads John to be late for every meeting. And in that case, being late to meetings is due to situations, it's the environment rather than John's character. So it's not that people don't have characteristics, it's simply recognizing the bias that we have as a default when we get upset by someone's behavior. It's a matter of recognizing that bias and asking yourself, are there other possibilities in this situation? So when it comes to forgiveness as a skill, these two behaviors that we have of splitting and of the fundamental attribution error, recognizing these two behaviors we have and addressing it is key. So they're the 4 crucial skills that you need for every relationship. And if you want more skills, tips and strategies on ADHD, relationships and communication, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you in the next video.